Hey everyone, it's Ashley from Wholesaling Out of the Box, and today I'm joined by Sean Bowen and Cameron Peters. So today we're going to talk about going into new markets. What does that involve especially from the three of us who are in different spheres of the business? And can you do this virtually? How to do it virtually and things like that. So I guess getting started, what would you say each of your roles are going into, like when we go into a new market, we each kind of know what our tasks are going to be based on what our roles in the company are. So Cam, why don't you start and tell us kind of what your role is and, you know, what you kind of will do going into a new market.
So what would you say I do here?
Yeah. What would you say you do here? Yeah.
What would you say you do?
Yeah. So when we go into a new market, some of the things I do first is look at the community, look at where we're going, right? Look at what's supportive there, where the jobs are, right? What things are selling for, and then of course looking to see where the flipping's going on, looking to see the lower cash sales and the higher sales, and realize there was a flip there. Running the numbers in between to figure out, what buyers are buying at there. And then hopefully talking to some other folks. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is spinning up other folks in that area and talking to them and getting through the BS of understanding they know what they're talking about and where are their buyers buying at. And where are we going to get our leads? Where are we going to get our data? Because it's not from list source. Right? We're going to go organically get it. So it's establishing those connections in the local courthouses and the local governments and figuring out how we get that information out. And that takes some time. And a lot of people aren't going to do that. And that's what separates us right there in a nutshell.
Okay. So within the company, you do dispositions, which is selling the deal. So that's the buyer side on the beginning, like he was talking about. And also helping to make sure our systems and processes are in place for the leads, which I guess would be our prospects sort of phase. Yep. We got a new system we're working up. So all these buzzwords that we're trying to figure out. Okay, Sean, what would you say you do here?
I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so it kind of parallels with what Cam's doing, because we're all talking about doing it and then trying to reach out to different people, right? So doing the quick Zillow search, trying to get a market analysis of what's going on, and then digging, right? And really trying to figure out, because we can control where our leads come from, because yes, we're going to go mine it directly from the courthouse, but that doesn't dial us into a specific neighborhood. Right? It doesn't dial us into a specific, like it does a county, but it's not specific zip codes. And I think a lot of people are drilled into that, right? That's what a lot of the YouTube university world is saying, is like, pull these hot zip codes and go pull these leads. Well, the way we pull our data, that doesn't give us that fortitude. So, and then Cam had mentioned this on the other side, which is talking to buyers, potential agents, or other wholesalers in that market to kind of just get a feel of where to go, what to do, who to talk to. And then is there an attorney's office up there? Or for that matter, can we get some feet on the ground to get us what we need for pictures, lock boxes, and then making it accessible? So yeah, I think it's really important to know before you go into a market, you want to know what's going on with it. You want to know, knowing where your list is coming from, then what are you going to do? Right? Like, who are you going to go after? And then getting access for, like we did this, but depends on other people if you want prop stream, but we got MLS access to get like the real up-to-date data and know like the best you can get with, I think that's probably the best data you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's really important just to take the time to build where you're going to go, define it, pull your list, and then you can start to build people and relationships that are in that same market doing business. But I always say this, and it doesn't matter what market you go into, I care about finding the deal first and finding on the right number, and then turn around and be able to find the buyer should be super easy, especially in today's market. I mean, we're recording this in 2021 of like the market is on fire. So you could have one-off buyers that are buying at, 75, 80%, 83% loan to value, and their profit margins are super tiny. Versus when I got into it, it was back in like 65 and 70% loan to value, as high as they were going. So yeah, I think that's really important to take the time to build that.
Yeah, so kind of building up those relationships, making sure that we have feet on the ground somehow, and going from there.
Yep.
Okay, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about my stuff. I do transaction / closing coordinating. So like making sure we can find an attorney. The attorney is credible. The attorney will work with wholesalers. Some will not. They are not investor friendly. So trying to figure that out. Making sure that they have an EMD that we can use. We try to use a generic EMD that's like $1,000, $2,000. We keep at the attorney's office. So that our EMDs are $100 ish for the seller. So if we have $1,000 EMD at the attorney's office, we can have 10 contracts out at a time. So making sure that we have that rolling EMD that's available so that we, when sellers are like, hey, is there an EMD there? Are they legit? We can show them that, yes, we are. We have an EMD at the attorney's office. And then something that we're running into right now that I'll talk a little bit more about later is if you're going to out of state, or you're going to a different state than you've been in, are your contracts still valid? What are the laws that you need to know to change the contract to make sure it works for that? We're doing a couple of deals in North Carolina right now, so we'll look at the North Carolina case study in a little bit, but that's something that I've been thinking about too. But case studies. So we've recently expanded fully into Richmond and a little bit into North Carolina. We're sort of dipping our toes into the North Carolina market. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what each of us did specifically for Richmond. So let's circle back to you, Cam. What specifically did you do when we got into the Richmond market or prepping for that?
Sure. So that was establishing those relationships with the local courthouses, right? And combing the neighborhoods and starting to figuring out how we're going to pull the data out of the cities and the counties, and also where was the most action happening, where were the most buys happening, where were the most flips happening, and making sure that we were focused on let's of course try to pull from the hottest market first, right? Or hottest. Sometimes that's within the county, but the hottest section within the county, and get that rolling. And from there, it was, of course, establishing all the processes so that once I figured out what we needed to do, I documented what we needed to do on, electronically and by video, so that our virtual assistants can then go replicate the task, and I can get back to doing, highest and best use, time value of money sort of thing, and not continuing to do those processes. But it's a lot of work to get it going. And now with the virtual assistants, it's a lot less work. It's not necessarily autopilot, but it's pretty darn close.
All right, Sean?
Focusing on buyers and getting the access that we need to that market for MLS access, which was making relationships with existing brokers. And actually this broker was already on his way into Richmond to sit and have the ability to have that access. So then get that access for everybody, and then start calling around to different people and asking, who they are. Do they have buyers? Can we talk about what their loan to value buy is? Can we vet those people? So a little bit different now that we're a bigger team, that we can parallel and do things at the same time, was a lot easier than singular back in the day. Because man, it is a lot. It is a lot of time. It's a lot of work. It's not hard, but it is just time commitment for sure. So yeah, trying to build some buyers and having the access to the MLS, and then making sure that we start getting those things going while the leads start coming in.
Yeah, and I would say that Cam is definitely the first step there, making sure that we can start getting the leads coming in, because it takes a little while for things to come, for those leads to come to fruition. So while we get that up and running and perfecting that process, then it's going to Sean, where he can start building a buyer's list, making sure we have MLS access or whatever needs to happen there and that kind of thing. And then it goes to me, which Cam's process is easy to replicate, give to VAs or whoever on your team. Sean's is sort of more of a one-off situation. And then eventually it's a little bit easier, you know, making those buyer relationships. I think closing coordinating is the hardest to pass off because there's a lot of little things that you learn, or I've learned in that role, like about probate, which is what we do specifically. Like, okay, there's this random insurance that you need for probate if someone has died within a year. And at first I was like, what the heck is this? But now I can explain it pretty well to the seller, as well as other little things about like, oh no, you cannot give up a house. It is not that easy to give up a house and your percentage in it, and things like that. Being able to explain this like minutia that I've learned from working on these cases specifically. So that's where it gets a little bit harder to pass off some of that stuff, but it's still doable. For Richmond specifically though, what I did was we started talking about attorneys, and then we actually talked to our attorney here in Hampton Roads, and she was like, yeah, I can still close deals in Richmond. So that made things so much easier for us. It's not a different state, so we didn't need to change our contracts. We didn't need to do a new EMD. We were able to just continue working with the attorney here in Hampton Roads. The only, I think, hiccup we've had is that Cam and I got into it last week about mobile notaries, a very spirited debate. And so we've been going back and forth about that. And I'm trying to talk to the attorney about that a little bit more so that we can figure that out. But I think that's been our only real hiccup. Do you guys agree? Like, do you feel like our movement into the Richmond market has been pretty smooth?
Yeah.
All in all?
Totally. Everybody stays in their lane and does their role, and that's the best part of us company.
Yep. I think you could sum it up to when we go into a new market, I do all the little research on the front side, I guess. And then I was basically telling Sean and talking with Ashley, hey, this is what we need, right? And then each one of you guys go out there and do your thing, right? And that was like a huge part, because the first deal that we brought, we found a buyer with a relationship that Sean got, because I was like, I need relationships. We don't have the buyer, right? Here's what we got. And so, yeah, it's definitely a team effort, or it's one person working 24/7. Either way, either or, you choose your life.
I feel like it's been harder too because of the pandemic. Richmond is still close enough that I think Sean, especially, and Cam too, because you're close to Richmond, would have been at those in-person networking events trying to find buyers and building these relationships, but they weren't happening because of COVID. So now that is starting to loosen a little bit, maybe we'll be able to do that and get a little bit more traction there as well.
Yep.
Anything final to say about Richmond?
Game on.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a little break and we will be right back soon. And we're back. So we talked about the Richmond case study. Now I want to go into North Carolina. So we started Richmond toward the end of last year, and I think our foothold in there is pretty good. North Carolina's a lot newer. This is something that we've just had a couple of JV deals fall into our lap over the last month and a half. And so we're just now starting to, like I said at the beginning, dip our toes into the North Carolina market. So Cam, why don't you tell us what you've been doing in the North Carolina market to kind of prep for that, and how it was different than the move to Richmond?
Yeah, so I think specifically with this one, so when we went into Richmond, we did a lot of planning on the front side, and we didn't have a deal yet. We started marketing for deals. We've had a couple of JVs that have come to us, and so we kind of had the deal already, right? So it was more going to find the buyers and going to find somebody to close out this deal, and that is extremely difficult. Like, it's not rocket science, like I always say, but it's a lot of work, man, to go find people who are actually closing, not somebody else just looking to wholesale your deal, and then understanding what the buyers are buying at there with limited resources, such as, yes, we have PropStream and things like that, but we can go a lot deeper in MLS and figure out what's going on. So I would say the tools were not, they were limited versus what the tools we had in Richmond. So that was the biggest challenge there, is establishing those relationships with people who are actually looking to buy. And we found a good broker for sure to talk to, who had her fingers in the local community and works in the local and lives and her whole life in the local community. So that was a good relationship. But takes a lot of phone calls to get that one good relationship. So, like I said, not rocket science, but a lot of work. So that was the biggest part. Starting to go down there was, yes, we can do this. It's just going to take a lot of work and a lot of phone calls and a lot of data mining, knowing that we can't go quite as deep as we could with the MLS. So yeah, I think that's about.
Yeah, and I think with this one, it's a little bit weirder because you already have a deal, like you said. So you're on that 30, 60-day time crunch to find a buyer.
Yep.
It's not like, okay, we don't have a deal yet, so we're just sort of like gathering buyers for when the time comes.
Yep.
So I think that adds some extra pressure.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, Sean and I both, for the most part, don't work too much on the weekend, a little bit here and there. But in this North Carolina market, we've both been doing things throughout the weekend, chatting with people, talking with people, because we're on that time crunch, like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we're doing all this for when we get a deal. It's we got a deal and we got to get this done because we said we are going to get it done. So, yep.
Yeah. Sean, North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because we're tag teaming it. I've been digging a little more deeper into talking with the seller actually, and I think I might have a foothold into the original title company that closed the deal. And so I'm taking that route where I'm going to start going directly to the title companies that are doing these types of deals, like wholesale, creative financing. So a few different people I've reached out to. One specifically is the attorney that closed this original house, and waiting for a call back there. But another person is local in the area. Another agent said, hey, this guy does this kind of stuff all day, every day. So we just got a call while we were on here with him saying that he's interested in talking with us about this deal. So I'm taking the route a little bit different than I've ever done, which is the attorney / title route. And, they deal with those kind of closings. They have those people in their database, right? In the Rolodex per se, like old school, but yeah, like, hey, can you give us some connections with people that are already doing this? Because I think that'll help. So a little bit different than what I've done in the past, and kind of like the way Cam and I were talking about with not having MLS access and just having this prop stream and just digging under Zillow. So yeah, it makes it a little bit more challenging. It makes it a little more difficult to move it. And that time crunch is massive, right? It's like you said, not most of us work that much on the weekends, but when you got something like this and you're like, you got to make calls, like, yeah, do what you got to do, get this thing moved. So yeah, definitely challenging, definitely different. But the biggest thing I see with this is growth. Like, it's forced us into me just taking this reality of like, oh shit, maybe I can talk to a title company and an attorney. And there's another foothold of some people that they're around all the time that have this, and they're in that county. So it's like, how can you not go any closer and any direct? Like, that's the way to go. And I'm like, why did I never think about that? So it's kind of raised its head to be a new thing, a new avenue, which again, anytime you're growing and learning, it's always uncomfortable. But if you're not uncomfortable, if you're comfortable, you're never uncomfortable and you won't grow. So digging it.
Yep.
Yeah. And what I've done in North Carolina so far was I was trying to reach out to a title company that I thought would be promising because an attorney, because our primary attorney recommended her. And I'm getting the feeling they're not very investor friendly. They really haven't responded. They said something about wholesaling that made me kind of like, okay. So I think they're not investor friendly, which is sort of when Sean stepped in, and I think that has helped him make some of those connections. So definitely not as smooth. And again, I think that time crunch is a big factor because before it's like, it's going to take 30 to 60 days before we get a deal, another 30 days to 60 days before we close. So I've got 3, 4, 5 months before I need to solidify a closing attorney. And in this case, it was just like, okay, we got to kind of figure it out pretty quickly. I think this segues really well into the last section I wanted to go into. Can this be done virtually? And if so, what are the special things you need to think about when you're moving into a new market virtually, as opposed to like we're expanding outward close to where we're at. So if need be, we can do things like go into North Carolina or go into Richmond for like big issues or whatever. But if you're in Virginia and you're like, I want to start wholesaling in San Francisco, that's a different story. So what are how can it be done virtually, and what are the important things you think people should know about or to remember to look into when they're moving into a new market virtually? Cam, Sean.
I'll start that one and just say, like, you need to know your market. You need to know what the average sales are, right? Whether that be from a 1-story up to 1,500 square feet to a 2-story up to 2,400 square feet. Call this like ticky-tack investor specials. You need to know those numbers, right? Because the rest of the numbers will kind of fall in line within probably $5,000 to $10,000 of what a rehab budget is going to be. And then you need to know what those people are buying loan to value at wise. That's a massive piece of this pie, right? Because you could, if you take our same model and you say, hey, these guys are buying at 70 to 80% loan to value, and you go over to California, those guys could be buying at like 80 to 90% loan to value, and you're missing deals because you're trying to contract up at the wrong loan to value or LTV. Getting access with MLS, I think, is a must. I've realized now, since we don't have it with North Carolina, how much work and more time I'm having to put into this by digging into it and having to spend more time, because I don't have like what we're used to, right? Like, you usually have so many agents you can call. You can see so much information about LLCs. You can do all this kind of stuff. And I know North Carolina is like a really open state. They'll give you their grandmother's phone number, but like, it's crazy to think that if you don't take these small pieces and at least have those in play to start with, you're going to really struggle to take it virtual. Really struggle.
Okay. And something I wanted to ask too was, how big, when you're doing this, should your market be? Should it be a neighborhood, a school district, a whole city, a county? Like, what, when you're going into these new places, because it's hard to know, like, for the entire state of California, what LTV they're buying at. Like, that's impossible for one person to know, especially when they're first getting into it. So what should you be looking at? Neighborhood, city, county, school district, etc.
I think county. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I think county, and I think it's based off a lot of the local economy and the businesses, right? You know what I mean? You want to go where the jobs are. You want to go where folks are coming into work. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, folks are moving there to work, sometimes away from their families. Those are the markets you're looking for. And yeah, I would say by county, but I think it starts with the employment and the economic. You know what I mean? You don't have to be an economics major to figure out where big companies like Amazon are going and Google, and what, you know what I mean? Like, you want definite support in the community. So yeah, I would go by county. But then, I mean, we kind of do it in Richmond. We target different areas of the county as well, right? Or don't look too hard at certain areas of the county, because it's just not, it's not going to be your highest return on investment looking in that part of the county, because the sales aren't there. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. For example, Apple is building a new campus, or whatever they call it, in the Research Triangle. So like the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina. So that's coming in 2023. That is a really big market to get into right now, because how many houses, like, they're going to need to bring in a ton of people for that Apple campus. So how many houses that are not in great shape right now, we buy ugly houses, that are going to need to be flipped in time for that 2023 rush of new people coming in. So like Cam said, looking to find, okay, there's going to be a new Apple campus. There's a new Amazon center, I think in DC, or outside somewhere in Northern Virginia, that they're going to be bringing in soon. Like, all of those things, those are big things to look out for. Just new businesses in general.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good call.
Yep.
Future business will bring sales.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so last thing is, like, what things are specific to virtual wholesaling? So something that we sort of touched on is having that feet on the ground, so that someone can put a lockbox on and take pictures. So what do you need? What besides that do you think is super important to have in place pretty early on, so that you can make sure you're doing this effectively?
Cloud-based systems. However you're tracking and working in your business, it needs to be cloud-based, right? We use Podio. You can use Podio. It's awesome for all that. Google Drives we use, but you can use Dropbox. There's other things you can use. You don't have to use these things, but when you establish that connection and you have somebody go by the house, or you even have a seller take pictures of the house or whatever it may be, instead of an email with 75 pictures in it, right? And an actual folder with the pictures that you can attach to the file. And as you work through the file, you can share notes with maybe you have somebody out there running comps for you and doing specific things for you in that San Francisco market or wherever it is, right? And if you can communicate with them via the cloud and essentially be like, hey, here's this whole file on my desk, here you go, but it's virtual, that's invaluable. You gotta be in the 21st century or don't do it.
I mean, we have a fax machine, so it still works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but that's a really excellent point. And just so that everyone in your company, no matter where they're at, can have access to those materials.
Yep.
I keep some things on my desktop, but it's all things that I use really regularly, and it's in the cloud-based system. It's just so that I can, like the wiring information, I can pull it up pretty quickly, but it's also on Google Drive or in our system so that, everyone else can find it.
Yep. Not to mention what happens when somebody, goes in the hospital or just something happens, and that could be part of your virtual team, part of your core team, whoever it is, everything's still there and everybody can still access it. So, hopefully your guy out there or gal out there taking pictures and inspected the property doesn't get hurt. But what if they go just MIA on you for 2 weeks, right? At least everything's out there and virtually so you can grab it and work with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that's important for this virtual wholesaling?
Man, you got to have your base pieces. If you can get MLS access, if you can get a Podia or prop stream, to be able to pull real data for real sale comps is very important. Very important. I can't speak to the amount of times that we have not had good data, and it's a waste of time. So bare minimum, if you can get MLS access for that area, that's probably step one. I would go with that. Don't go cheap on your access for quarterly. If you can pay $400 a quarter and have that, do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think going cheap is a hindrance. But yeah, I cannot speak enough to the virtual world of setting everything up in a virtual setting.
Well, and 400 is kind of steep, honestly. Most of our accesses are like $50 to $100 a quarter.
Meaning that if you I'm saying from like an MLS standpoint versus like are you referring?
Yeah, MLS.
To the, okay. So I had a different number in my head. Even better.
400 a year.
400 a year. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's worth it. Totally worth it versus the data point that doesn't charge you $100 a month. And then you don't get good stuff, right? You don't get everything you need.
Yeah.
So I think it's the most important pieces. A CRM system to put all your data in a virtual setting, having MLS access, and then having remote access to those record rooms that your VAs can go and pull that data. The rest of that should just fall in line. That goes down to the feet on the ground, pictures, lock boxes, all that kind of stuff. That's what I see like the three fundamental pieces being.
Yeah. And I think going off of that, just making sure that you know what your process is, because if you guys are not in an office together, it's real easy to get lost in what you're supposed to do in the everyday. It's easy to do that in an office. So when you're not in the office together, it gets even harder. So making sure you have a clear system and a clear step-by-step guide of what you expect to happen.
Check in the morning.
Check-ins. Yeah. But okay, cool. So anything else on going into new markets, doing research? No,
I think we covered it.
All right. Awesome. So thanks guys for talking with me, and thanks to everyone that was listening or watching the video. Please leave us a comment or a review wherever you found us, and let us know what topics you want us to discuss here on future episodes. Finally, check out our program and all of our future events at www.wholesalingoutofthebox.com, and we can't wait to talk again soon. Bye.
Later.
Bye guys.